All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. My name is Dre Devots. I'm a systems engineer here at Verify, and I will be your host for today's workshop. Today, we're joined by Brian McKay, another SE over here, and he's going to walk us through troubleshooting some remote phone control and Cisco phone macro. Hey, Brian, how's it going today?
I'm good, man. It's October. It's almost Halloween. It's my favorite time of the year. Very excited to binge horror movies, and also very excited for our upcoming Verify Beyond event. That should be exciting as well.
Absolutely. All of those things actually sound really exciting. I'm excited for October just because of the weather for me. So,
Oh,
along
yeah,
with
that
colder
too.
weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to start off with a quick overview of our company and what we do. Next, Brian's going to walk us through troubleshooting that remote phone control and Cisco phone macros. We will pause for Q&A and get some of your questions answered. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel in the bottom right corner of your screen. After Q&A, we will reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around to see if you've won. Verify is the preferred analytics and sorry, that skipped on me. Management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and Cube Call analytics, customizable dashboards, widgets, remote phone control, change management, and DAO plan management. But today, like we said, we're going to be focusing on that remote phone control and Cisco phone macros. If you have any other questions on any of our other features, please feel free to chat them over to me, and then we'll get those answered offline for you. One more thing before we get things kicked off, for those of you looking for a more hands-off Verify experience, we do offer a managed consulting service. This service that provides a dedicated Verify SE to do all the heavy lifting, giving you and your users a complete hands-off experience. Think of us as an extension of your organization. It provides upgrades, one-on-one training, report and dashboard building, or anything you need. Your dedicated Verify systems engineer has you covered. The only thing you have to do is reach out to us. If you want any additional information on our ECS services, feel free to reach out to your account manager, and we'd be happy to see if ECS is right for you. With that said, I'm going to kick this over to Brian, and he's going to take us into the wild for that remote phone control and Cisco phone macros. Let me stop sharing my screen here, sir, and then give you the
Right.
ball.
And you should be seeing my phone macros screen and Verify here.
Yes, sir, we see it, buddy.
All right, beautiful. Okay, all right, let's take it away. So basically, just going to give you a quick overview of the two features, kind of what the difference is, and then we'll talk about all the reasons that may occur why they're not working. There's a fair amount of moving parts with these, so it's real easy for these to stop working if something changes in your environment. So there's just a number of things we want to go over. There's usually pretty common fixes to these, but sometimes you got to think outside the box a little bit. Sometimes it gets a little more complicated. So basically, phone control is what you see here. It brings up a list of phones. You can search phones by directory number or by device name, device pool. There's a bunch of different stuff you can search by, but typically you're going to want to use, device name, device description, or directory number. You can do equals or contains. It will be basically just load up your most recent used phones, and then you can search for additional phones with the search window. So I went through and checked all these today in the lab earlier. They all are working, except for this one, which I broke. So we'll go into that one for a minute. But basically, you can see the status if they're registered. It'll show up with the registered and the IP it's registered to. Otherwise, it will just be blank here. And if the phone's not registered, obviously it'll show up in a list if you search for it, but you won't be able to actually connect and control it anything. So let me just show you what it looks like, and then we'll kind of get into the back end of things as far as troubleshooting. Now, phone macros is a little different. Phone macros is more of a series of button presses you can put into a script to send to one or more phones. So we've got a bunch of different macros built. You've got all these macros built here in our lab. We've got a bunch of different test subsets. So basically, with macros, you have to build first what's called a subset, and this is the group of phones you want it to go to. You can send it to all phones, although I don't advise that. You can send it to, what you're going to want to do is kind of target which phones you want to send it to because the macros are phone model and phone family specific. So, the 8865s are going to work with the 7600s and et cetera, et cetera. You basically have to kind of tailor the scripts because the menu interfaces on the phones are different as they release new models. So you basically are just telling it to go into the menus and press certain buttons, or go down 2 steps or whatever. And so things are not going to be in the same place on all the phones. So they have to be tailored to the particular phone model families. But you can program these to basically do anything from, change the background, set image, lower the volume, raise the volume. You can delete TFTP servers. You can delete the ITL if you need to. And the ITL actually ties into troubleshooting phone control because one of the causes of phone control failing is possibly a stale ITL file. And so this kind of gives us a method to get around that and get in and delete that. So we'll get back into that in a bit, but let's go back to phone control. I'm just going to pull one up just to kind of show you what it looks like and what kind of information you can access in that. Now, one thing to be aware of while this is loading, let me go to this phone control FAQ here. This is one of the articles on our knowledge base. It gives the list of the phones that are compatible here. There are certain models we don't support, like the video phones. I can't remember what those are, the something 650s or something. I can't remember what the exact model number is. Those certain conference room phones that don't have any screens. Those kind of phones are not compatible for one reason or another. Either the firmware doesn't support it, or the image quality is so high that like trying to fetch a screenshot from it is just really difficult to do in real time. But all the standard models that most of your users are going to be using are compatible on here, and they're all listed here. So let's go back here. This should be loaded up by now. Okay, so let me just show you one of these. I think this first one is the one I broke, so we'll just go to the next one on the list. Let's go down to a newer one, 8945, just because that screen is a little nicer looking on that one. These older ones, just little tiny little black and white screen usually. So this is what it pulls up. You've got your screen here that will refresh. I think you can set it to refresh periodically in this auto screen refresh. But typically I just click on the screen and it will refresh it. Or anytime you press a button on the touchpad, it's going to refresh it as well. Although I don't know why it's not showing anything. That's interesting. Okay. That's a little weird. It's a black phone screen. It was working earlier because, like I said, I went through and tested all of them. Okay, you know what? Let's try a different one. I don't know what's up with that one. Let's see. Let's do 8851 here. So this pulls information on the phones from 2 places. One, yeah, there we go. Somebody left it on the settings menu, I see. So we'll just go back out to the main screen here. So some information it pulls directly from the phone, like the screenshot, for example. Some information it pulls directly from Call Manager. So we kind of get a mix of the two in these tabs up here. So yeah, that's a much nicer looking screen. Basically, the screen, this cracks me up because I do it sometimes too. The screen is not a touch screen. Like you can't click on this icon here and have it actually go into that function. You have to use the actual soft key button on the side. And it's funny, people think this is like a touch screen all the time and they're clicking on it like nothing's happening. No, you have to click on the buttons. And I've done that too on occasion. It's like, really? How many times you've been doing this and you're still trying to use like a touch screen? But anyway, so basically you can do anything on the phone that you could do if you were sitting in front of it, as far as, dialing, getting into menus, etc. You can also use these fields on the right. Like let's say you want to dial a number or do a press digit test. You can just type out the number you want to dial and hit dial number, and it's going to just dial for you. You don't have to like do 2, 1, 3 and dial the whole number out. You can execute macros, which we discussed a minute ago. These scripts, if you want to run a macro against this individual phone, you can do it from here. Or you can run the macros in bulk against tons of phones, and you can schedule those, et cetera, et cetera. Now you can get some device info from here. This is basically going to pull the device info from the phone's property page in Call Manager. It'll basically show you all the information that you would get from that page. It gives you a hot link to edit the device in CUCM. That's just a link directly into the phone's property page. So it'll take you to your Call Manager interface, and then when you it logs you in, or you log in rather, it's going to take you right to that phone properties page rather than having to dig around, for it in devices. Hardware is going to show what the phone's firmware version is, model number, serial number, etc. That's pretty useful, obviously. And I believe this one gets pulled directly from the phone itself. Lines will show any assigned lines to the phone. And again, you have a hot link to edit that if you want to change the lines on the phone from that. Network is going to show where the phone is plugged in, what device it's plugged into, what port it's on. So if you're trying to track it down in some nightmarish wiring closet with cables running everywhere, this can really help narrow it down to where exactly the phone is plugged in. Services, if there's anything like mobility extension or anything like that, any subscriptions or anything, they'd be listed here. We don't have any on this one. Speed dial, same thing. Any speed dials the user's configured would show up here. And then call stats lets you look at the quality stats for the call if it's on an active call. Right now it's not, so there's not really anything going on. But if it's an active call, you'd see the jitter and packet loss lines possibly fluctuating. If you're getting any of that, you'd see the MOS score adjusting with every refresh. And that will basically just tell you what the quality looks like. If a user says, hey, I'm on this call, right? I'm on this important conference call right now, and the phone is really choppy. I'm getting every third word. You can jump on quick, look at their real-time statistics and see if they're getting a low MOS score, if they're getting high jitter or packet loss. Just kind of give you an indication if there is something going on with the phone on their end or if it's possibly on the other side. So that's basically what you can do with phone control. Now, to get it working, you have to do some things on the back end in CUCM, which I will show you in a minute. But here's what you'll see. I think it was this one that I sabotaged earlier. Here's what you'll see if it's not working. It will just load a screen with a bunch of ugly red text and tell you it's not working and give you a possible list of reasons why. So phone did not authenticate and accept the remote control request. Attempted to control with this account, so it lets you know what the app user account it's trying to use is, what the authentication URL is. And this is just the standard authentication URL that you see on most call managers. And then it'll give you a possible list of reasons. The password's incorrect, the password or username's entered incorrectly, doesn't have the phone in its controlled devices list, possibly missing some roles it needs to control the phone, et cetera, et cetera. So if you see this, then it's time to start digging into the troubleshooting part. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into Call Manager. I got to log back in. And I think it was just that. All right, let's go to device. Actually, before we go to the devices, there's one other area I want to show you, and this is in enterprise parameters. And this is pretty important to phone control too, is the secure authentication URL. So you can use a non-secure, but usually we will be using a secure. And this is what the standard URL looks like, the CCM CIP Authenticate JSP. Now, occasionally, there's two things in this field that might cause us issues. One is if it's using a fully qualified domain name instead of the IP. That has been known to cause issues in the past if there's any DNS routing issues. So sometimes we need to, just make sure DNS is updated and that's all working, or just, switch it from the FQDN to the IP address. Another is, and we don't like to name names, but there is another product out there that sometimes gives us headaches with phone control. They don't mean to, but it's just the way they set up their application. It kind of interferes with ours, and that is one called Informacast. It's basically a third-party phone paging system. But what they do is they redirect this URL to their server. So you'll see Informacast in the URL, and it'll be pointing to a different server name or IP if that's the case. So Informacast, we've had an interesting history with them. There was an issue with some of the earlier 14.4 builds recently where it wasn't doing the authentication relay, because of what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to take our authentication request, forward it to the call manager, get approval, and then send it back to us, and then we can connect with the phone and communicate with the phone directly. That part was broken. Then they said they fixed it in a later version. In fact, I think I've got the I have the article here. If I can get this stupid WebEx thing out of my way. Let me go a little smaller here. But anyway, long story short, they supposedly have patched it with the latest version. Yeah, Informacast 14.4. Some of the early versions of that had a problem. Now, supposedly it's been fixed since then. But Dre was mentioning to me beforehand that possibly this issue may have reemerged with their newer versions. I couldn't find anything on their knowledge base to indicate that, but just something to be aware of. So if you are using Informacast or planning on using Informacast, just be aware that this may be an issue. Otherwise, if you're not, then that's not a problem. But that's usually one thing I like to check first, is make sure there's no different authentication URL in there that may be causing this issue. So let's go to user management next. We want to go to application user. And we're going to want to make sure, and I think we're using verified dev on this one, I believe. Yeah, there we go. So this is going to need a couple things for the phone control to work. One, it's going to need these specific roles. So it's verify. We usually make a verified group, and then we just put these specific roles in because that's what we need, just the minimum to access what we need for phone control and pulling data from call manager. Standard Axel API access. We use Axel queries to access most everything. CCM admin users. CTI allow controlled devices, CTI enabled, et cetera, and then standard serviceability read only. So we need to have those 7 roles in here for phone control to work, and for some other functions of verify to work as well. And the phone control and the phone macro features both pretty much rely on the same roles and permissions. So if one's not working, usually the other one's not going to work either. So the other thing is that the devices need to be added to control device list. This list here will give a partial list, but it's not really everything. So you usually have to go to device association. Let's see. Let's just I usually just search for all the SCP devices. Now, it does only support physical phones. It doesn't work with Jabber clients. It doesn't work with IP soft phones, even though those are SCP devices too, technically. But it only really works with those physical devices that I showed the list earlier that are supported. So usually I will just make sure all the SCP devices are added. There may be some IP communicators in there mixed in as well. That's fine. It's okay to add them to that list. We'll just filter out anything we don't support from that list when we're pulling the results. Yeah, so it looks like pretty much everything's added except for these ones down here. That's fine. Yeah, basically you want to make sure that all the phones though are added if you want to be able to control all the phones. And make sure that when you add new phones to your environment that you add them to this list as well, because unfortunately they don't automatically just get put in there. You pretty much have to go in and add them manually to the list for this user. Let's go ahead and go back here. Oh, actually, so yeah, while we was in there, actually, I got ahead of myself. So we're going to look for the one that is not working, which is this one here, the F03B device. So that is not in the control device list, and that's probably why that's not working. So we'll add that, save selected changes, and then we'll go back to the remote control. And then we'll try this one again, and it should load this time. Now, sometimes you have to make other changes and reset the phone to get it working, but usually with this, with the, if it's just a matter of having the right rules in there or adding to the control device list, it should come up right away once you make that change, which it did. So we're good there. That's working again. Now, sometimes the phones aren't working on the actual phone level. So let's go back here and go to application user again. Or no, actually, I'm sorry, we did that already. Let's go to device, phone, and let's see. I think it was F03B was the last four. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So this is the one I broke and then fixed. There may be a couple other things. If it's still not working after doing that, there may be a couple other things in the phone's config itself. So one thing I like to do is just kind of scroll down here and make sure there's no redirects in the authentication URL. These should all be blank typically, although we can, if we need to put a redirect into troubleshoot, we can do that as well. That comes in handy. The main other things are web access should be enabled. Now it says disabled, which is interesting. And I have seen this before. Sometimes the menu in Call Manager does not accurately reflect the status of this, and I'm not entirely sure why, because obviously the phone, the web access is enabled, or we wouldn't be able to control it at all. And another way to confirm that is go to the phone's IP page and go to network setup, and you can see web access should be shown as enabled here. Oh, interesting. Web access enabled? No. Oh, okay. That's strange. You know what? I'm wondering if probably a little short on time to try and turn it back on because we're going to have to reset the phone and everything. But yeah, that's an interesting example. That's weird that it's, I mean, it's obviously is enabled because we can get to this networking page and we can get to the phone itself. But for some reason, it's not showing in there. Not sure why. That's weird, but I haven't seen that before. It's usually not a big cause for alarm. But if it says no and it's definitely not working, then you definitely need to turn that on. And then one other thing we need to look for in here sometimes, there may be, it's not on all the phones, but some of them have a setting for HTTP or HTTPS enabled. And it'll usually be down here in this section somewhere, and I don't see it here. So some of the phones control it automatically, some of the phones don't, and you may have to turn that on. Or it may have the toggle turned on, but the checkbox is not checked, so it's not actually enabled. So whenever we change anything with these, if we need to turn on web access, if we need to, clear out an override in the authentication URL here, or if we need to turn on that HTTP or HTTPS enabled setting, it's going to require a reset of the phone. You're basically going to make the change, to hit save, then apply config, then reset. It's going to take a few minutes to reset the phone. And when it comes back up, it should be good to go. So those are the most common things we see that cause phone control issues. Another one that I mentioned earlier was a stale ITL file on the phone. That's the security file. If the phone gets moved from a different cluster or something and it doesn't get a new ITL for some reason, just some weird scenario like that, we may need to go in and clear that out. Obviously, if the ITL is bad and it's not authenticating us to the phone, then that's not going to work through conventional methods. Through the regular phone control, we're going to have to use a macro for that. So let me show you what the macros look like. Let's go back here, go in macros. This may take a little bit to load up. There's a lot of macros in here. Okay, so first we'll start with the subsets, which is what you pair with the macro to control what the macro gets applied to. So we've got a bunch of them in here, 8851 test funnel. Let's take the first one on the list. This is going to have a list of steps that it just sends to the phone. Now this is just kind of a one-way blast to the phone. It doesn't really do any handshaking, like, okay, I got the first command, what's the next one? And it just says, you know, do this, then do this, then do this. So this one is just a kind of a general test one. It's basically set up to get applied to any device pool, partition, location, or phone model. Like I said, these can be specific or can be model and family specific, so you don't want to necessarily blast it out to everybody. Now you can put in specific device names. Okay, so this is why you can run it with this, because you do have a device name in here. So basically, even if everything up here is wide open, these three fields are going to limit what the phone macro gets applied to. So if you just have one phone down here, it doesn't matter if this says any up here. It's only going to get applied to that one phone. So you've set this up to test with this specific phone, so that when you're doing that, you don't really need to bother to do any changes up here. It's just going to do it. And you can do it by device name, by directory number, or by the device description, or a combination of the three. If you want to add in, you know, some of each, it'll only apply it to those phones that it's able to match up. If you want to do it for a specific model number, you know, 8851 in this case, you can just scroll down to 8851 and check that one. And if you don't have any phones specified down here, it's basically going to try to blast that to every 8851 in your cluster, which is what you want to do if you're trying to do an update 8851s after hours. But I don't recommend doing it during production, obviously, because you're going to have a bunch of users calling and freaking out that their phones are rebooting and things like that. You don't really want that. So what you can do is schedule it for after hours. Let me cancel out of here. I'll just kind of show you. So when you're running a macro, let's go back to, I think we have to go back to actually the root macros level. Go macros. All right, so, and you can see we've got a ton of different ones here. We've got change background image, change TFTP, ITL delete. Here's all the ITL delete scripts, and I can show you one of those in a minute. So basically, you can select your subset, which will tell it what to apply to the phones. You can select, you know, CTI for phone button control, and this is what we use when we need to delete a macro or an ITL. All right, use a macro to delete an ITL, I mean to say. We're going to use this because the regular method will not work. The regular method is just HTTP based, and that won't work if the ITL is stale. So we'll have to use CTI, and then that's going to, if there are any phones on an active call, you can have it skip those. You can tell it to capture screenshots if you want during each step, so that if it fails, you can see what the last step is. It doesn't usually work as well with CTI as it does with the web-based, so we usually turn that off for using CTI. But if you're doing some other function, you could easily turn those on and have that show up. And then you can create a new subset for unsuccessful phones. So let's say you try to blast it out to 100 phones, 10 of them fail for whatever reason. You just give it a name, it'll create a new subset, and then you can try those other ones later after you've investigated why they possibly failed. And then you can tell it the email results to you as well. You can schedule these. Schedule just gives you all the same options plus the scheduling component, you know, tell it when to run. If you want it to run once or want it to run, you know, repeatedly on a schedule, you can do that. So yeah, like I said, typically if macros aren't working, it's probably going to be similar to why phone control isn't working. It may be one of those other issues we just went over in Call Manager with the config. So the ITL file is the exception. So let's take a look at the macro list for an ITL just to see what's involved. And we're kind of running short on time, so I'm probably not going to have time to run through it because it takes a few minutes to reboot the phone and everything. But okay, let's see. I know we had some down here. Change background image. Delete ITL. ITL delete. There we go. So there's a bunch of them here. Yeah, let's just look at one of these. So basically, all it is a set of button presses. You can add the steps from here. Basically, when you're building a new one, you would pick your model first, and then you would pick your steps from here. So you have everything from press, the numbers on the keypad to the soft keys, press the settings button, volume button, whatever. And you also have what are called wait pauses, and those are handy for certain things. And there's also unlock digit sequence. So let's say you want to quick unlock the menu, the security menu in the settings. You can just tell it to send that rather than having to type **# and it will send that sequence for you. Now the wait pauses come in handy because some functions take longer than others. So like for example, if I'm doing an unlock sequence that usually takes, I don't know, 5 seconds roughly to do that unlock and refresh the screen and come back and show that it's unlocked. So I usually just put in a wait pause for 10 seconds after that. They did a 1 second, but I usually do a 10-second just because sometimes it takes a little longer. And then it really depends on your network and how fast it's able to execute these scripts to get to the phone. But sometimes you may have to put wait pauses in between steps if it fails on a certain step because it needs more time to complete and before it gets the next command pushed to it. So we use those a lot in between steps, but you can reorder the steps however you want with this up down arrow. So basically you're just going to get into the settings button, you're going to get into the security menu, select the trust list, do the **# to unlock, wait for it to complete, select the ITL file on the keypad, do the unlock soft key for that. And then it's basically, another wait pause for the unlock to complete. And then you're going to wait for the erase soft key to appear. And then that's another wait pause. And then you're going to hit that erase soft key. It's going to delete the ITL. It's going to reset the phone and take a few minutes to come back up and pull a new ITL. So usually if we do suspect ITLs are an issue on the phones, we'll try one of these macros on them to delete them and then test again. A lot of times that does solve the issue. So that's probably one of the most common things we see outside the normal call manager configuration stuff we already went over. So there are some good articles on this. Sorry, I keep getting my tabs blocked up here. So this one right here, we have a troubleshooting remote phone control article. I think I wrote this one like a long time ago, but not much has changed. To be honest, our phone control programming code has not changed much in the last 8 years because Cisco's hasn't really changed. So there's not really much we can do to improve on it. But this has a lot of steps. Most of the ones we already covered, but there's probably a few in here I missed. There's a lot of things that you can use to test this out. Yeah, for the most part, just about any kind of scenario you're going to run into is going to be covered in this document. And then it even shows like what kind of errors you might get when you're trying to connect to phones. Like you might get a Cisco 0 or a Cisco 4 or a Cisco 3, and those can mean anything from authentication failure to a connection error to some other kind of status error that it's getting. One other thing about the macros, you can also import them from a zip file we have. I don't think it's posted on our website publicly, but if you go back to, let's see, let me back out here. So where it says add, there's an up arrow to import macros. You can either do a single macro or multiple macros from a zip. So we have a zip file that you can request from us that we can send you It's this verify macro pack ITL delete. So this is all the macros for the different phone models to delete the ITL specifically. So these are good, like if you just want to save some time, not have to build them all yourself, or you can use these as templates for other types of scripts just to kind of play around with them and get an idea of how they work. But you can just I'm not going to actually import it because I think these are all imported already, but yeah, you can just select either the zip file or, go in where you've extracted them and select the specific one you want, hit open, and it will add it right into the list here. And it's just a time saver. So if you ever need that, just let us know. Just email us at support@verify.com and we'll be happy to send that your way. So I think that's pretty much all I got for the moment, unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I don't think we had one Q&A about documentation, but it looks like you showed that about on our website with our knowledge base.
Yeah. Just if you just search for either phone control or ITL in our knowledge base, you'll find a bunch of stuff. I just brought up, some of the common ones we use here. This is the Informacast one. And then there's, if you look under ITL, here's all the ITL. So it doesn't have the link to download the macros, like I said, but it will give you steps for each phone type in here on how to create your own. But honestly, I would just say hit us up for the macro pack, and you can just download it and import that. It's easier than building them by scratch. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it, Brian.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome job as always. I'm going to grab the ball back from you.
All right. I'm gonna Top Gun Maverick smack that back over to you.
Nice. All right. All right, if there's no more questions, we're going to talk about our user community a little bit. Planet Verify, our new online community where you can connect with your peers and expand your knowledge of all things Verify. Plus, you may end up with some good recipes from the cantina. Also, just announced Verify Beyond will be October 27th. Be the first to register for our upcoming live stream event and secure your spot to learn about upcoming features and enhancements from Verify, Zoom Phone, WebEx calling, roadmap discussion, and more. We will also be sending the first 100 registered Verify Beyond attendees an awesome t-shirt. Make sure to head over to verify.com/beyond to register.
Oh, they love our t-shirts, that's for sure.
That they do. All right, the moment we all been waiting for. The winner of this week's workshop gift card is Kyle Wojnarowski. Congratulations. We're going to have your account manager reach out to you and get you that gift card over.
Congrats, Kyle.
Don't forget to join us next week where Jim and Matt will showcase Cube and why you need Verify Cube Analytics. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.